We teach girls shouldn't want sex, but they're still engaging in sex. And then you wake up the next day and like, I regret, I feel used. This thing of like boys using girls for sex, like I hate it so much because I think if you're going to engage in having sex with another human being, you should also be wanting it.
And if you're finding that you're getting together with guys and they're having a good time and they're getting off, but you don't feel satisfied, well, then take that responsibility to say, you know what? I will definitely make you satisfied. And first, you are going to satisfy me, so get to work, young man.
Hallelujah.
Welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode of The Interracial Couple. And we've been discussing being grumpy and being either the grumpy one in the relationship or being the other one, being the dealing with grumpy in a relationship.
Being the one who was grumpy. So I kind of like talked about all these things that I do to get myself out of either grumpiness or sadness. And so I did all those things in the morning, but I was still grumpy. And I also had to do my job, which part of my job is recording this podcast. And today's Tuesday. We usually show up on TikTok for like half an hour with our coffee to just kind of like answer questions, promote this podcast. And so I was like, you know what? I still have a commitment to show up on Tuesday at 11 on this, on TikTok. So I showed up and I was just like, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. It's just like we have people come and we answer question, and the person who there were a couple people who answered questions about being what it's like to be in an interracial relationship. What else did people ask?
How we met, where we're from, if we get any sort of hate for being an interracial couple, where we live, kind of the basics, and then this girl or this young woman, I assume she was a woman at the beginning, the way she was asking certain questions, and was really engaged in I want something like what you have, but I'm a teenager and boys just seem to want one night and to move on.
Yeah. And so she gave us an example that she has this, I think, a boy that just she thinks to just want to, have sex and move on. And I felt like out of my sadness, I had a moment of joy to answer this. I felt like there was something in me that just was I am going to be of service to this young woman. And I literally, when I was talking to her, I felt like being of service, I could drop my sadness and my grumpiness. And it was so amazing because her question was so crucial, because I remember being told the same advice, but I was in my early 20s. And I said, I'm going to tell you something. And we both engaged with her for some time. And I think my advice to her, I don't know if you said it or I started, was yes, some boys do want to have sex, but majority of the boys actually want connection. And what we've taught our boys, which I think is so important, we've socialized boys that boys just want to have sex, but actually boys and men, as I learned dating, wanted connection.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that, culturally we've kind of taken away from boys. One of the things that's so beautiful about being a human is that we have love in sex. We face each other. We can look into each other's eyes when we're having sex. We can take responsibility for how the other feels. It's beyond just procreating or keeping our species alive. There's something much deeper that we can have through that. And when whether it's porn culture or general sort of pop culture or locker room culture or whatever, that I just want another notch on my belt. It's not, we say that it's dehumanizing when guys treat girls or women as just a lay. And I kind of turn that around a little bit, which is that it's actually really dehumanizing for the person who does that. Because as a human being, what we have is responsibility and connection and this potential that goes far beyond just busting a nut and moving on, or just making sure that our species survives and moving on. We have the opportunity to have something so much deeper than that. And so when we take that away, when as a culture we say to guys, yeah, just, screw as many girls as you can, watch porn, and how many times can you jerk off in a day or whatever, we're actually taking away something that is so vital and something that's so unique to humanity. And when you take that away, you lose the uniqueness of your humanity. And therefore that, to me, is dehumanizing. We have a culture that dehumanizes boys by telling them that what they should want or how they should act is exactly not human.
Yeah. And then we tell our girls, which is how I grew up knowing, is like the boys just want to have sex. And I remember this woman, she was a few years older than me, when I told her that there's this guy who's like hitting on me and he probably wants sex. And she looked me in the eyes and like, he may not just want sex. Like, you're really cool to be with. And yeah, sex may be part of it, but he also could want something else. Mm-hmm. And it was so important because before that, I just always thought, like, if a guy was hitting on me, they're after something. And I'm not saying like that is not true, but that is not just it.
It's not the whole part of the truth.
Correct.
It's not that it's not that. But then we also kind of flipped it around a little bit for her, which was like, well, what part of this stereotype are you playing into? Are you kind of buying this thing that, as I've watched Disney movies and the Disney princess, and I want a Prince Charming to come and sweep me off my feet, or as a girl, I'm supposed to want a deeper connection. I'm supposed to want love more than sex. Not that you don't, but how much of that is really your authentic self? If the guy is not I would posit that the guys that she was referring to were being driven by something besides their true authentic self. If you just want to get laid and move on, and get laid and move on, I think you're missing part of your own authentic self, because that's, like I said, there's a dehumanizing aspect in that lack of connection. And so if I'm going to say that I think men are being socialized such that we kind of told that we should want that, we go into the locker room and joke about this hot girl we banged last night or whatever, that's fine. We can look at that. But then the other side of that is, what is the socialization that we've also said is better? Particularly, we tell our young women, like, be modest, find connection, wait to have sex for someone you love.
Don't want sex, don't ask for sex, it's
right. Now you're also showing up with something that's not authentic. So, but now you have a guy showing up with porn culture, with pop culture, with all these things saying, be tough, don't show your sensitivity, fuck her and move on or whatever. And then you have girls saying, oh, I just want Prince Charming. I want someone who's going to love me and care for me, someone who's going to connect with me. Like, maybe that's not actually authentically you. Maybe what's authentically you, regardless of your gender, but let's kind of flip this on its head. Why can't you just be a girl and just want to get laid and be like, that was super fun. Like, thank you so much for showing up and getting me off. And that was wonderful. And I don't know if I'll ever see you again, but thank you.
But girls are never taught to think that way. And so like our advice was like, if you choose to have sex with this guy or this boy at this point, is like, actually choose it from a place of like, I also want this, so that you don't wake up the next day and feel like this boy used me,
right.
Like this thing of like boys using girls for sex. Like, I hate it so much, because I think like, you shouldn't be used for sex. Like, you should also want sex. If you're going to engage in having sex with another human being, is like, you should also be wanting it. And so we teach girls that girls shouldn't want sex, but they're still engaging in sex. And then you wake up the next day and like, I feel used. And I was just like,
yeah. And also then make sure that it feels good, right? I mean, it was like, I remember the show, it was called Fishbowl. It's a Spanish or a South American show. And I loved it because the very first episode, it's about a woman who's a high school therapist. And in the very first episode, this boy and this girl get busted. She's giving him a blowjob in the bathroom. And now they're in trouble and they have to go see the therapist. And the therapist sits there and the girl comes in and she's, like, oh my gosh, the shame. I got caught. I was giving a guy a blowjob in the bathroom. I'm such a bad person or whatever, right? And the therapist sits her down and says, so did he reciprocate? And it was kind of like this moment of like, wait, what are you talking about? And at the end she's like, well, if you gave him a blowjob, did he eat you out? I mean, it's got to be fair, right? And so I've always kind of loved that because I feel like sometimes it's so easy and our culture is like, oh, a blowjob is easy. Well, okay, maybe. But if he's going to get pleasure, what is the problem with you getting pleasure? And I would even go back, Esther Perel said something in Mating in Captivity, which is one of the things that it can also be really hard for women to let go of is we have this culture, particularly in, Christian or Judeo-Christian culture, which is you shouldn't get something good unless you've earned it. And so the feeling of good sex, like what do I have to do in order to earn the right to have this pleasure? And it affects both men and women the same, except that women carry it a little bit differently because tend to be, the feminine energy or whatever, or whether this is cultural or what, but being a caretaker. And so therefore I need to make sure everyone else is taken care of before I can take care of myself. And in sex and sexual pleasure, that's not the case. So like, if you're going to go and sleep with somebody, make sure you enjoy it, and if you're finding that you're getting together with guys and they're having a good time and they're getting off, but you don't feel satisfied, well, then take that responsibility to say, you know what? I will definitely make you satisfied. And first, you are going to satisfy me. So get to work, young man.
Hallelujah. There was something about that conversation that was so enlivening that for a minute I forgot. Not for a minute, for a whole 30 minutes. Engaging with this young teenager was like, I forgot I was sad. And I think a little bit of it was like just, I guess, being of service does really help,
And maybe that's the answer. And maybe that's why I had such a good Sunday and yours wasn't quite as good because I got to be of service. I got to make you coffee and breakfast and dinner, and I got to be of service. And that actually felt really nice.
And I don't know how I had forgotten about this because in the beginning of this show, I talked about all the things that I do to get myself out of sadness or grumpiness, yoga, and all those things are like for me. And I'm not saying like self-care is really important. I'm not saying that is wrong, but I think like that is something that I forget is like, I tend to like when I'm having a difficult moment, I tend to go inward and take care of me. But maybe what I should do is also remember to like be of service, even in those difficult moments.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really nice. So there we are. The key to overcoming grumpiness is actually helping teenagers have more connected and better sex. Maybe.
I really wish I was having better connected sex when I was a teenager.
That would have been, yeah.
And I do wish if teenagers are going to have sex, like my growing up, I was told to not have sex.
Yeah, that you shouldn't want it and you probably shouldn't enjoy it, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I didn't go out and stuff. So
yeah.
Anyway. We should wrap this up. Time's up.
Yeah, before we get in trouble.
Before I get grumpy again.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us this week on the Interracial Couple Podcast. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.